Thanks for having me. It's great to be filling in today live for Morgan Streetman. He's a good friend of mine, and it's going to be a real fun time to be live with you today as we look at the news of the day and try to give a perspective that is a little bit outside the normal tit-for-tat blame game that you see in a lot of the news. It's always about which team is the bad guy, which team is the good team. And in my broadcast program, we try to focus on something a little bit outside of that perspective. We call it a neighbor's choice, which is that we have to roll up our sleeves and solve problems neighbor to neighbor. We can't rely on D.C. We can't rely on Washington to solve our problems for us. We have to do it ourselves. We have to learn to look closer to home and look closer to our communities and see what we can do to enhance the value of the community by the talents and skill sets that God's given us. So one of the things that I like to do is just kind of set the frame of where we're at from the big picture view and then see how the news informs different insights that we can learn from. I believe that the problem we have today is that we've got too much politics and not enough principles. We don't have enough principles guiding the way we think of things. Right now, we're looking at a world that is lost in a milieu of political scapegoating. When I see the news every day, it's all about, there's the Delta variant, the Delta variant is going to come get you. It's going to come get you. What will it be next?
Gamma.
American Airlines variant. Which one's next? Spirit Airlines? You don't want that variant. That one's a tough one, right? And so the problem is that they're always coming to the next thing to get you all exhausted with negativity. And I think it's very hard to find, news sources, whether it's on TV or newspapers, that are actually trying to cultivate a sense of empowerment, a sense of positivity. And that's such a quaint thing. And people are so lost in this cynical time that we're in that people don't even want to stop and think about, why is it that every news program I listen to just about, it's always keeping me feeling powerless when I listen to the show, scared out of my mind, feeling hopeless, feeling like the only thing I can do is just to pick a team, red or blue or whatever, and just wait for them to solve it every few years when there's an election. That doesn't work. And we've realized that. We've realized that the hard way over the last year or so with the lockdowns. And now they're going to continue doing it in some places. Australia, many places, they can't even go outside to walk the dog. I mean, that's amazing. Crocodile Dundee would be rolling in his grave right now if he saw what's going on in Australia. They've lost their edge. They've lost their drive to be free citizens. And that's the thing, is that when we've lived in such comfort for so long in America and the West, it's hard to realize how important liberties are. You start trading them in left and right because, again, when there's a time of a crisis, we have a desire to kind of fold back into the herd and say, you know what, everybody's going this way, I'm going to go that way too. I don't want to be outside of the herd. They all say put a mask on while you're cutting grass, then I'm going to do that. They say put 2 masks on when you're hiking a trail with nobody around, I'm going to do that because that's what everybody else does and that's what I got to do to stay safe. You don't have to do that. You don't have to put yourself in ridiculous situations just to feel safe. But unfortunately, as the founders have reminded us in their different lessons that we learn, if you're still taught their history today in schools, is that those who trade in liberty for security will get neither. And that's what we're at today. We're losing our liberty because we are in kind of an abusive relationship in some sense with our government. They keep telling us, just keep going with this. We'll take care of you. And then some people go along with that, and it's never enough. Remember, they said, don't wear a mask. Remember, Dr. Fauci came out early on and said, don't wear a mask. There's no science behind it. Then he said, I'm sorry, I was just lying because I wanted to help the health safety workers get their masks first. Then he said, well, put on a mask. And then he said, now you need to put 2 masks on. And it just keeps going, keeps sliding the things that they want you to do onto a never-ending spectrum of commands. The new thing, of course, is the Delta variant. They keep saying this is the big thing. We might have to shut things down again. The press secretary, Jennifer Psaki, came out recently with Biden's administration and said, well, we will support any governors if they need to do a state lockdown again. You say, my goodness. All the evidence that we have seen so far scientifically come out say that the Delta variant is not quite as vicious in terms of its actual effect on the body as the original some of the earlier variants. That doesn't mean it's not something to laugh at, of course, but the point is to lock down an economy was a method that was used, and it was not very effective. In fact, some of the studies have come out, including in the RAND Corporation did a study recently looking at those who locked down versus those who didn't, and there was no correlation with reducing mortality in the states and governments where there was more heavy-handed lockdown. So it didn't really work. In fact, it was actually worse in some cases because, as we've seen, there are long-term consequences to trying to press a button to turn off an economy. Economies are very complex. They have all kinds of different signals in the different fields of industry that all need to be working together. You've got supply and demand. You've got all these different connected industries that work hand in hand to create coordination of resources to customers that need it. And when you just press the button off, you're going to do serious long-term damage, not only to the economic foundation of the community that you're in, but also the health and the mental health of people. And it's no surprise that we've seen record numbers of children even skyrocketing with reports of suicidal thoughts. Come on, this is insane. We can't have a society, a thriving, long-term, healthy society, if we're going to create an environment in which children, who are supposed to be the most innocent among us, feel like they are thinking about ending their life. This is insanity. Well, this is not a sustainable path. But unfortunately, because of the all-in nature that the corporate press has invested in these narratives in connection with the government, because now we've heard, of course, that the White House is saying they're working together with Facebook and other places to create the narratives that they want, that to stamp out disinformation is the way, or misinformation is the way they put it. Well, that's not the role of government. The role of government was never to be connected to social media outlets or publishers or whatever and coordinating what's considered to be misinformation and censoring misinformation. That is the exact opposite of what the founders intended with our republic. But we have a bunch of lawlessness today in D.C., what I call anarcho-tyranny, where they're using their tyrannical overreach to be a law unto themselves, where there's no checks and balances. Oh, let's just totally shred the First Amendment. Let's just totally shred all these different fundamental liberties that are not to be messed with without creating catastrophic results. And so that's why it is a strange time we live in. It's a surreal moment because we never thought that we would see in our lifetimes maybe that the White House would be coming out admitting, oh, yeah, we're going to go ahead and just coordinate with groups like Facebook to stamp out information we don't like. And we're just like, oh, what else is new? Let's go get some coffee. I mean, what has happened to this country? The slow boil is now ramping up hotter than ever before. This is something we have to take seriously before it becomes too far gone down the road of lawlessness as law. That's what we're dealing with. So I'm David Gornowski. We're going to take a quick break, but in the moment, I want you to think about, where did we fall? How did we fall into this mess? How did we get into the mess where we've lost our way? Is it because we've abandoned our respect for the founding principles of this nation? Is that what we need? Do we need to understand what the Constitution means? Do we need to teach it in middle school and high school? Is that something that we need to consider? I want you to weigh in at 888-404-1010. That's 888-404-1010 if you have a comment on the matter. But this is something that I'm always trying to get people to think about on my own program, is this idea of it's more about principle rather than policy. When you listen to a lot of the pundits in D.C. today, they're always talking about, well, I've got a policy prescription. I've got a policy prescription. I've got this plan to map out the lives of people with this X, Y, and Z, or I'm going to map out the plans this way, A, B, C. What about principles? You got to get back to the foundational principles by which you're going to govern and manage and lead a society before you start talking about policies. And that's what I'm thinking we need to take a step back and look at today, is the principles that guide this nation to excellence. We all want safe neighborhoods. We all want prosperity. We all want win-win opportunities. We all want hope. Well, it's got to start with getting the principles right. I'm David Gornowski, in for Morgan Streetman. We'll be back in just a moment.
Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.